board members, we're going to go to agenda item number 8. We're going to be brief there, and then in true fashion of today, we're going to jump to number 12 because we have to present on 12 tomorrow, and we want to give staff a sporting chance to be prepared. So we're going to turn time to Superintendent Dixon for agenda item 8. Oh, and Chair Earl, Jenny, does that conclude your report? Yes. Thank you. It does. Thank you. Superintendent Dixon.
Thank you, Chair Hymas. We'll start with our wonderful specialist, Lori Bayevsky, and the student art that makes us all so happy when we're surrounded by it.
There we are. Lori Bayevsky, your Fine Arts Coordinator, and your Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Learning Program Coordinator as well. And it's my pleasure, before we get into the student art for today, to also thank several board members, Board Member Lear, Board Member Davis, and Board Member Booth, for representing the State Board in this year's selection from the Springville Annual High School Art Award Competition. And Sybil also had a huge hand in getting everything organized. They chose 6 pieces, and of the 6, we will be purchasing 5 of those 6. We were able to purchase 5, and these will be swapped out on the back wall and for the May board meeting. So this is incentive for you guys to keep coming back. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce this month's art. This is from the SUU region. Southern Utah University is one of our regional BTS arts partners, providing professional development for the schools down in Iron County, which includes this year we've got, or this month, excuse me, we've got 2 schools represented. The red, green, and black panels are from Enoch Elementary School, and their BTS Arts coordinator is, or BTS Arts teacher, Catherine Spagnolo. And then the purple panels are from North Elementary, which is right in Cedar City. And that program was done by our BTS Arts instructional coach, Kirsten Anderson. And for those of you who aren't aware, we have instructional coaches all throughout the state that actually support BTS on the ground. They as you can see here, they actually do instruction as well as provide professional development and continuous learning for the teachers, for the school communities, and for actually also for themselves. They've created quite a cohort statewide. So going through this, if we look at the black panel first, and they're kind of the same on both sides. So the black panels over here with the bugs. These are 2nd grade, and this is again from Enoch Elementary, Insect Anatomy and Habitats. So first they created pencil drawings of anatomically correct insects, and this is the coolest. They listened to bug-centered music. Does anybody have any selections you think they listened to? You got it. Yes, that was one of several selections they used. And they used mixed media to illustrate the drawings based on the time signatures and the beats of the songs. So that one's one of my favorite as a musician. The red panel, this is also Enoch Elementary 4th graders, and this is called Utah Symbol Prints, Oil Pastels, and Printing Ink. The students chose 3 Utah symbols to create prints. Then they traced their designs on foam sheets and printed each on radials, creating these oil pastels. So beautiful. The 5th grade project is the Earth Spheres, which is the green panel. This is a favorite. This is a favorite integrated science lesson. Students studied the Earth spheres and created habitats inside a jar. They were required to represent each sphere along with 3 plants and 3 animals. We invite you to kind of try to ferret those out during a break. Students then created pencil drawings of their habitat and illustrated them using watercolor pencils. And the purple panels, this is our last panel. This is from North Elementary again in Cedar. And in this integrated arts activity, second graders learned about the basic elements of story, how people throughout history have used ceramics to tell story. So the students chose to tell either a story by illustrating setting, plot, or main characters. Then they used the slab method to create an original ceramic vessel that told a story. And there you have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Coordinator Bayevsky. Coordinator Bayevsky just does such an amazing job, and she has a schedule all year, and it's such an honor for us to be able to be surrounded by this beautiful art. So thank you, Lori. All right, I have a question for you in terms of how much time do you think, this is just for you to like maybe show me with your fingers, but how many minutes do you think on average board members across the nation spend discussing student outcomes in a given board meeting? Like what percentage? Any guesses? What percentage of your time as a board reflecting maybe the national average on the percentage of time spent on talking about student outcomes in a board meeting? In a board meeting. Randy was right on, 2%. So I'm going to take up a little more percentage today and try to really focus on some student data. Now, it doesn't mean that you're spending time on things that are not important, but there's a lot of stuff that you spend time on, right? And so that was kind of shocking to me when I heard that data point, because it's my belief that you all do an enormous amount of work to get elected to a board because you care about kids. And so then you make a lot of decisions because you care about kids. And we want all of our students to have a quality education and have outcomes and opportunities. So I'm going to be really intentional about that today because I know these are things you care about and you want to talk about. Before I get there, I want to do a little braggadociing because that is my opportunity with the mic and as the superintendent. Dual language immersion, of course, has been talked about on the Hill. We look at budgets, and this is something that comes up often. But I want you to know that we were called out as one of 5 states in a playbook that came out from the National Clearinghouse for English Language Acquisition. And this is actually supported by the Office of English Language Acquisition that comes from the Department of Education. But this playbook featured best practices from these 5 states, and we were one of those. And not just as a consequence of the playbook, but even before that, we get called on to speak a lot about our world language programs and dual immersion and our bridge program where kids can get college credit. And so this playbook, I will send you a link. I should have had a hot link in here. But one of the things that we're trying to do based on a data point is to make sure that dual language immersion and Title III are working together to support students who are learning English in our dual language immersion schools. Many of you have raised the concern about when you look at our data, students learning English tend to score lower than their peers on both national and state tests. And we're working very hard to make sure that we're using the right strategies. So this blending of the strategies we use with language acquisition in our dual language immersion, as well as the strategies that we know work for language acquisition for students learning English, it makes sense that our departments would be working together as well. So really happy to see that national recognition. So, Ryan, you're driving. There you are. The next call out is a project that we've been working on, and by we, I mean Katie Hill and her team. Katie Hill in Teaching and Learning has been doing some amazing work around building capacity in instructional coaches. Oftentimes when we have funding for something like instructional coaches, our LEAs incorporate the coaches, and you heard the Reeses talk about it today. But there's a variation in what we might think that they need to do and how they best support our educators. So we've taken a proactive role in building capacity. So we have coursework, and Then we develop this community practice where they come together and support each other. And then we have personalized support. So we coach the coaches, coaching the coaches, trying to build capacity in our districts and charters to be able to then support their coaches. So we have competencies and professional learning standards around it. And I'm really excited to say that we have over 850 educators who have participated in these cohorts to get an instructional coaching endorsement. And that was picked up by an organization called Learning Forward, a wonderful organization. And they highlighted that work. And Katie and her colleague, Janice Bradley at the University of Utah, collaborated, I think Janice is at the U, collaborated to write this article and be published. So that was pretty exciting to highlight the great work that staff are doing. All right, so I told you last month that our 2024 NAEP scores would be coming out shortly. And I'm kind of surprised that we didn't have more conversation on the Hill about this already, because there was a press release, and Ryan, I think you would agree it was pretty quiet. We were kind of surprised that we didn't get question more or have people come to find out what's going on. So we saw some national trends. We did not see things happen in the nation like we were hopeful. So we're still seeing some impact from the pandemic. So when you compare us to the rest of the nation, we have been trending in the top 10 for a long, long time. And you might recall that I mentioned we were the only state after the pandemic in 2022 to stay flat in 8th grade math. So we were called out for being unique there. So here we are now with the 2024 3rd and 4th grade math, and second in 8th grade math, 3rd and 4th grade reading, and 4th and 8th grade reading. So you can say, great, we're in the top 5. That's awesome, right? Like, it makes me feel good to see that. But then you realize that what's happening is that our students who were underperforming are almost on a downward trend. And so we're seeing a widening gap and still not the acceleration we were hoping for. So there's good news, and then we have opportunities. I want to just quickly then move to what this looks like in terms of raw scores. And Darren Nelson is in the audience, and I always try just to not embarrass myself when he's in the room and I'm talking about data and assessment, because he is amazing. And even though I've learned a lot, I can never articulate it like he does. So you can see the scores there from 2022 to 2024 in each of these areas and compared to the national score. So you can see that we went up in 4th grade math a couple of points. We went down in 4th grade reading a couple of points, and we stayed flat again in 8th grade math, still way above the national average. And we put this in red intentionally because you see that we took a drop in 8th grade reading. So I have to stop and ask ourselves why, because we are killing it in work with literacy. So I want to maybe point out just some things to think about. So we've got more children falling below the proficient level, and the quote that has been shared with the media from me representing you is that it underscores a need to double down on effective reading support and interventions for our students. And we see this happening, especially in K-3, that I'll talk about in a moment, where the board invested money. We invested our ESSER dollars. But 8th grade reading is concerning. So let's talk about why. And Julie Clark's in the room if you want to call on her, or Darren. But here are some assumptions we put together. And this is national data as well. The ongoing impacts of COVID are real. So think about students that didn't return, students who just didn't lean into school, and the real effects of that we can see in those transition years. So think about the kindergartners are now 4th graders. 4th graders are now 8th graders. So you start to see down the road how the impact at that time where they experienced a learning gap continues on with them. Another thing, I'll just hold up my phone. Social media, drawing kids' attention away from putting a good book in their hands and getting immersed in literacy. We see this in adults as well, of scrolling rather than turning pages. And I think one of the big factors that we're really talking about nationally is chronic absenteeism. So if you look at our data before the pandemic, I think we were at 14% of our students were experiencing chronic absenteeism. I think it's in 2019, if I've got this correct, Darren. And we're now at 24% of our students are absent 10 days or more, indicating that we're experiencing chronic absenteeism in over a quarter of our kids. So missing a lot of school and a lot of instruction time. So you put all of those factors together and you can see that we're not making the gains. Something I also want to, well, I'll share two more things. One is that we've had funding for K-3. So we've had that from our wonderful reading initiative. We have used ESSER dollars, but we haven't targeted middle school literacy. And somebody to my left has pointed that out for quite some time. So we have to help our upper grade teachers. You received an email that, it helped me understand that, oh my gosh, we've got some teachers that really need some help in understanding how to use formative assessments to help kids read. And just, we've really got to target, I think, our upper elementary and middle school. And we've got staff here who could tell you what we're doing in those areas. And I'll show you a couple of slides, but we can see where districts have made it a total K-12 effort around literacy. Their scores reflect that. And then I think the one thing I'll end with here is that if I were a legislator, a board member, I would be saying, well, what did you do with the ESSER funds? So let's think about how some states scored. So I know that I'll point out our sister state, Alabama. We have a lot in common with Alabama. The way they're structured in governance, so many things. My good friend Eric Mackey, Superintendent Mackey, would talk all the time because it's just like, truly, they feel like our sister state. What is different is the economics. So we have a strong economy, stronger than Alabama. And when we look at the funding that was sent to us based on students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, ours worked out to about $1,700 per student. Alabama received $4,200 per student. And on average across the nation, the ESSER funding was at about $3,700 per student. So we received significantly less. So where you see states that have made some gains, they were able to have enough funding to provide a lot of tutoring service. So on-demand, high dose, high quality tutoring. They had very robust summer programs. We had LEAs doing a lot of that work, but with significantly less funding, which means your services are less. So those are just some theories that we don't know for sure, but those are theories that we have. And when you combine all of those factors, we're not accelerating at the rate we would like to. So this data is important because I think it helps us just reflect and refocus and double down on the things that we know that are working, that are evidence-based. So with that, Chair Hymas, I know you're getting nervous about time, and I'm going to just quickly run through letters. So we give you this update. You can see the data there. You have the slides in your backup. But one of the things that we found when we started working with teachers is that our administrators and district leaders really needed this support and training. So you'll see that there with the support that we're giving teams of administrators and their lead literacy coaches coming together. In how do you build this literacy system so that everybody's working, thinking on the same page? And again, all of the leaders that have been through letters training, which is pretty intense training, and I don't think other states are not doing this. And so we feel like building these systems, concentrating on leaders while we're supporting teachers, will impact the entire system, and we'll start to see that change. And you can see already in our K-3 data, you can start to see all four of those grades starting to improve based on Acadian's data. And again, we talked a little bit about the coaches, but you can see 3rd through 6th grade, as I just mentioned, that we had over 150 educators attend fluency and comprehension professional learning. And then again, the coaches are just so critical because we're building capacity in them so that we're not always in everyone's space, but it's them doing their very best work in order to get the best results from kids. So the last thing I will end on, Deputy Jones, do you want to say anything about the site visits that you've made? We've been giving awards where we see great progress in our teachers. Wasatch District, I will give a shout out because in both math and reading, I think they are the only LEA who improved past their 2019 data. You're shaking yes. So you heard from Wasatch not too long ago. I know that Chair Moss brought them in to talk about what they're doing. So think back to 2019, and they have surpassed where they were in 2019. And when you talk to them, it's this whole systemic approach that they've taken in their district with all hands on deck, with coaches, administrators, community members. And those are the kinds of systems around literacy and mathematics we want to build in our communities. So we've been giving out Science of Reading Excellence Awards, and I love that our Deputy of Operation has been attending and making those visits. So can we end with you, Deputy Jones, just talking about your experience?
Yes.
This is a cold call, so thank you.
Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. My intent was not to monitor the program; it was just to be better educated and understand the program. And in order to do that, I was always taught that you need to be on the ground to see what's happening, what they're doing. It is making a difference. You can take my word for it, or you can take the quantifiable data like that was presented to you about Wasatch, right? Now, this is not an endorsement of a particular program or anything like that. It's just an assurance that the money that is being used in a way that does make a positive difference to the kids. Whether you agree with the science of reading or not, that's entirely up to you. But just from a fiscal standpoint, or from that aspect of, are we maximizing the dollars to the full benefit of what our overall objective or goal is, or line of effort, if you will, to use a military type term? Yes, we are achieving great things, and it's a result of the teachers, their dedication to being trained themselves, those types of things too. So is it the only solution or the only answer? It doesn't have to be, but it's certainly making a difference in all aspects of early literacy. So I just really appreciate the program staff. Julie's been great about being patient and putting up with me, because I'm probably her hardest student that she's ever had. So really, it does, for whatever it's worth, from strictly a financial lane or perspective, there's a lot of good things happening out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Jones. And just representing all of the educators that are leaning in, instructional coaches, everybody in this system. Julie Clark is the face of that. She's our coordinator over literacy. So if we could give Julie a hand for just all the efforts of being proactive. I'm really proud of the work that we're doing and leading out to support our LEAs in this hard work. So thank you. Thank you, Chair Hummus. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We have 3 comments or questions. We'll start with Member Reel, then go to Member Bogus, then over to Member Lear.
Thank you, Chair Hymas, and thank you, Superintendent Dixon. I agree on all fronts of what you were saying, and I'm so proud of the work that we've done to increase our scores and all of the work of our educators. I did want to make a note, and this doesn't need comment unless you have one, that in reading the report and reading over our scores, there's something that I keep coming back to, and that's that we see that our minority students and our low-income students are not performing or excelling at any rate that we'd like to see. And my comment on that, as someone who has a district that has that's very diverse and very low income, the importance of wraparound services and additional supports for these students is so important. We will never get our scores up if we only focus on kids that have the most privilege. And so for me, I see those test scores. I know we have a lot of work to do. I'm excited to get into the math standards and work on that, but I hope that we don't forget that not every student has the same opportunity, and that in order for us to excel as a state, we need to help all of our students. And that's something that I keep noticing in a lot of our test scores and results. Doesn't need a comment, but I wanted to make sure I said that, so thank you.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
Thank you, Chair. To the Superintendent, with your permission, have we conducted an audit, or do we have an Excel spreadsheet or a delineation form how ESSER funds were spent across the state? I know we get lots of things, and every now and again, I forget that I read one.
Through the chair, yes, ma'am, we do. In fact, you might recall we used to give you an ESSA report every month. And now we're closing all of that out. So all of that data is available. We have now. We can tell you what we have in grants management. What we can tell you are the categories. I don't know that we can go in and tell you dollar for dollar. This is what was spent in Salt Lake District by every teacher, by every school. But we can tell you their general expenditures. Let's see, who is in the audience that could say, I don't know if Deputy Jones wants to add anything to that, or Deborah Jacobson, but we can lead you to where you could get that information. We actually have a website that shows you the categories statewide where things have been spent, and there are some reports that you can dig into. So I'll send this to the whole board via email to make it easier for you.
Thank you. Member Lear?
I have a question for Superintendent Dixon, if that's okay, Chair. And you may not know, but it's kind of been something growing in my mind the last year or two. I'm wondering if you know about Alabama, when you said that it does things, made some good strides. Do you know how present and or robust their pre-K? Some states have pre-K programs, some of them are. I'm wondering about that, because that seems like it could be a literacy issue, especially early literacy.
Yeah, if I may, sir. Anecdotally, I can tell you that both Louisiana and Alabama, who made strides, and you have to remember where they started. So they've seen a tremendous amount of growth. Louisiana, especially in literacy, and they both invested in pre-K heavily over the last 5 to 10 years.
And so, do you have any sense of, do 2/3 of their children participate, or you don't have any?
That I do not know. I'm happy to find out.
And if you do, I don't want to give you another job, but thank you. It has been striking me as really interesting and important lately. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Earl?
Yeah, over the last several months, excuse me, not that we have had a book group related to building writing skills. And probably one of the things that stands out most to me is that students needing just foundational knowledge, and that often our students who are struggling, and we're expecting greater increases. We're not seeing that, but I just feel strongly, as much as might be focused on early literacy in preschool or whatever, but I feel like all of our time should be counting when it's in school, meaning that we're building foundational knowledge and that we're really helping students with those foundational skills. And so anyways, we've been able to have a book group that's been really good to just look at what is effective, how do we break that down in such a way that it can be beneficial for all children. So, and that's one of the things Wasatch has been doing, is they've been asking, they didn't say who's the highest in the state. They said, where do we need improvements, and who's doing the best to make those improvements in the state? And no matter who it was, they went and asked them what they were doing. And then they tried to replicate those things. So they've been proactive that way. That's I think a very positive systemic thing that we could be kind of capitalizing on throughout the state, is that using those resources. So.
Thank you. Member Earl? Amen. Okay. I think that that concludes, Superintendent. Okay, thank you. Board members, we're going to, yeah. Okay. We'll clap for you, huh?
Hey, I'm proud of you for asking great questions.
When one person starts clapping, you have to join in.
Or else.
Yeah. Yeah, you just